Hi Maker, I am so excited about this month's Maker box. We definitely wanted to incorporate the theme of light, and you'll see that in the handcrafted bow included in your kit. So let's dive in and get started. So you have everything nicely packaged here so nothing will move around, was our hope. So you're just going to want to slide all that plastic off. This part here is going to be your base, so we'll put that to the side for just a quick second and take everything else out. Okay. Now, the first thing I would recommend doing, just because we want our base to be nice and stable, is to go ahead and glue those two pieces together. So I like to use a white sponge with my glue, so I'm just going to put a little bit on that white sponge and just spread it around. You just want to make sure it's not going to come out the sides. Wood glue is nice and thick, so it'll have a nice adhesion. And then you're just going to line those two pieces up and place that off to the side to dry, and we'll paint it in just a minute. All right, now to dive into this incredibly pretty project that we also wanted to make easy to do because we know your holiday season's probably jam-packed. We're gonna put that stencil to the side, and then you have a 3D cutout of the word Christmas. Put that to the side for just a second. We have a frame, and we have our base. Now, I wanted to stay really traditional for all of our colors so it would work between all three levels of our boxes. So the sign of the month was some really pretty Christmas trees that lit up, and I painted those all solid white. This I'm gonna paint white, and then our house I painted white. That's not to say you have to do that. You could absolutely add some color and other embellishments that you have at home. So I don't want you to be limited by the fact that we went simple and classic with this piece. So we're going to go with a yellow sponge. We're going to dip into our white paint, and you really want to mash that paint onto the board side to side. You're going to see that first level goes in a lot more like a stain or a whitewash. That's okay, just keep moving it around the board. Until we have a great first coat. Then I'm going to go ahead and do my edges. You don't have to do the edges. If you want to have stained edges with your frame, then skip this part. Although I'm going to probably go back over them a little bit, okay? So I like to keep moving, so I'm just going to keep rotating projects in here. That way, while something's drying, I can come back to it. You're gonna do another layer on that white, but it takes just a minute, and if we're trying to just put layer of white paint on top of each other, it just pushes wet paint around a board. So I'm gonna give it a second to breathe while I take just a little bit of stain on a sponge and mash it all around my frame. You do wanna keep the stain moving, so that way you can see that beautiful wood grain. So if it gets kind of clumpy in an area, just use the dry part of your sponge to mash it around. So almost like Karate Kid, wax on, wax off, until you have it nice and solid. Now I'm gonna put that to the side. And I'm gonna use the same sponge, and I'm gonna paint my base with the oak color as well. You can get in that little groove if you want to. I'm not gonna worry too much about it because my sign's gonna go in there. But again, I don't want to have this clumping look, so I'm just gonna use the back dry side of my sponge to dry it all off. All right, so now that part's done. And I'm gonna go back to another layer of my white because I want this to be really a nice solid white. You can see now that we gave it just a little bit of time to dry, it's looking a lot more filled in. And it also does help if you have a blow dryer at home, you can blow dry it in between layers, and that's gonna give it a better stick as well. So I'm gonna take it and blow dry it really quick and I'll be right back. All right, now that we have it nice and blow dried, I'm gonna take my piece of sandpaper and sand it so that way we can get a stencil to stick here and make it nice and smooth. Now it starts to get really simple. I'm gonna take my frame and my glue, and you might find it easier to just dump your glue out on the table a little bit. And I like to still use that white sponge because that way it's not clumping. If this drives you nuts, some people do like to put it on with the little paintbrush as well. Whichever you prefer works fine. Then we're just going to carefully line it up with our board. And you'll want to press and hold for just a little bit while it dries. Or you can use painter's tape to clamp it. And I'm going to paint my word Christmas black. Again, I don't want you to hesitate if you want to add a little bit of color. This could be really red, pretty in a red, even a gold, a glitter. Black sponge. All right, so I'm gonna take my black sponge, dip into the paint, and I like to unload on a paper towel or scrap piece of paper, and then just hop straight up and straight down, just like you're stenciling, but leave it in the frame and it'll make it easier to get the edges nice and crisp. All right, while that dries, I like to kind of place it where I'm going to approximately put it. And to peel your blue stencil, flip it over, peel the white back nice and straight. If anything starts popping up like this E, push it back down, crease it, and peel a little bit steeper back. So I'm just rolling my fingers back. That E popped up, push it back forward. All right. So you just want to kind of visualize where you want this. I'm going to kind of go for the middle. And just making sure I have enough room for my word Christmas. I'm going to place it on my board, push it down lightly with my fingers, and then there's a clear transfer layer. We're going to use that same peeling back nice and straight. And by straight, I mean like folded back. You don't want to lift up because everything will lift up with it. Making sure that everything stays down to the board. You don't want any letters on the clear. Make sure you get all the pieces off. And then to stencil, we're going to use that same procedure. Load your sponge, scrape it, unload on a piece of paper or paper towel, and lightly hop over your stencil. You should build 2 light layers instead of trying to accomplish it in 1 solid layer. Because if you use extra paint, the only place it has to go is underneath that stencil, and that's what's going to cause those bleeds, which aren't a big deal. We gave you a touch-up brush. You can get them under control, but we want to try and avoid them where we can. Once you have it filled in the way you like it, use a safety pin, or I like these tweezers. I get them from Amazon for $1 or so. And you're going to peel your stencil up. It's a very simple font. You'll see I got 1 little bleed there. I'm actually just going to scrape it away with my tweezers first. And then when it dries, I'll sand it and put a little bit of touch-up white in there. Peel all my pieces here. And then, as long as you like the coverage of your Christmas word, you can peel that tape off. Don't lose your eye dot. peel the tape off, and then your Christmas word should just pop out. We did paint it, so you might have to gently guide it out with poking it. Pop out your centers. And then we're going to use that same sponge paint glue technique, especially on the words. I like the sponging because then we're not going to have it pushing outside of the lines. You don't want glue lining your project. So it just needs a little bit. It's nice lightweight wood. And then you're just going to very carefully place it. That T kind of goes right in between the Y and the L. Bias towards the L. Then I'm going to just dip my dot in my glue. You have your very simple sign. Now we're going to take our bow that we handcrafted. Nikki spent so much time on these. You do have a little light switch here to make it turn on. And all you're going to do is peel that 3M sticker on the back. I have no nails, so I'm going to use the tweezers and place it on your sign. And then you'll just fluff it until you like it, because the bows get flattened during packaging, but they are wire ribbons, so you'll be able to just kind of take your fingers and fluff it up a little bit. Take your base and place it in there. And you have your completed project.